Look, I'll try and be brief so we can get into the discussion. One observation I'd make about the debate today so far is that we're kind of having two discussions. One's about engagement and one's about kind of those who aren't going to engage. I think, JJ, you referred to it a few moments ago as engaged consumers versus passive consumers. And I think it's really worth reflecting on that a little bit, and it's something I'm going to try and do with reference to some other markets where we've had to think about those sorts of issues. But just to unpack it a little bit, in terms of the not engaged, we've got to recognise there are plenty of people that just don't want to engage. You don't have to spend long looking at online comments on an article about the energy retail market to see people who just call for the entire industry to be renationalised. And that's not something I'm advocating, but I think it's worth trying to unpack what people are really saying there. And I think what people are saying is they don't want to choose. They're quite happy to be given something that they can just take as an offer, as long as it's provided in a way that ensures they're not being ripped off. So there is a kind of pretty clear sentiment, I think you find very easily there, from people who are just looking for some sort of basic offer that they can trust. It's also important to recognise there are some people who can't engage for a whole range of reasons: limited literacy, numeracy, intellectual capacity, and we need to make sure the market works for them, and particularly in a context where it is very difficult for anybody to compare the plans on the offers available on the market. And so, you know, there's a lot of discussion today about how we can make it easier for people who want to engage, but whatever we do there's always going to be a significant segment of people who either can't or don't want to engage. We need to make sure the market is working for them. Of course, they don't account for the entire market. There are people who want to engage. If that wasn't the case, people like iSelect and Compare the Market wouldn't have a business model. And if we get the market arrangements right, that's actually quite a good thing, because if we've got a segment of consumers who are out there choosing, that will actually have positive effects on the market. But we've got to get the market conditions right so that they can actually exercise competitive pressure that delivers value to other consumers. So I think we need to be having both of these debates. As I said, I wanted to reflect on this a little bit from the perspective of other markets. And I think the superannuation market is a really good example of how we've thought about how we deal with these different, I guess, consumer attitudes or degrees of willingness to engage. Super is, of course, universal for anybody who's in employment, and when we've researched consumer attitudes to engagement, they break up along a spectrum of people who just think super is something the government's taking care of to people who are actively in there trying to manage how their super is invested. Again, I don't think we're going to change that. It's just a reality. And luckily in the super sector, we've recognised that as a really important universal system for consumers, we need to account for that in the system design. So we have a strong system of regulated defaults in the form of My Super products. They are deliberately intended to be low-fee products. They're low-fee, but they're producing good investment returns over the long term. And we also have a market alongside that for those who want to exercise choice. How does it play out? Well, I wouldn't say it's working perfectly, but you do see a degree of competition in the default market. So there's a lot of scrutiny of how default funds, My Super products, are performing both in relation to fees and in terms of investment returns. I sit on the panel for one of the big sets of super awards, and the super funds compete really actively to be the best default fund. And what they're really trying to demonstrate is the level of value, net returns that they're providing back to consumers. And that's important because of the way in which the default and choice markets interact. They want to be the best default fund so they don't lose consumers who decide to exercise choice because they think they can get a better offer elsewhere. So you do actually get the default market actually helping to drive helpful competition. So obviously you can probably see I'm sort of trying to take us back to where Gerard started us, which is a discussion about the Thwaites recommendation. I think there's a really strong case to be thinking about how we have better defaults in the energy market, because at the moment the way it works is the people who are kind of on the defaultish products, standing offers, are actually getting the worst deals, and that's kind of the opposite to super. I mean, if you're in a My Super product, you're probably doing better than most people who've exercised choice. That's the way a default market should work. And I think as part of that, we need to think about the detail of some of the threats recommendations, such as the idea that that we should strip out things like marketing costs, because really what we want to be doing is creating a system where there is actually competition between defaults on the basis of price, because that's the factor that most consumers are wanting to choose upon. Of course, that still allows a choice market to evolve and for retailers to make offers that differentiate further in relation to price or differentiate in relation to customer service, and there's no intention that would be that we do away with that. So yes, we do need to work on better engagement for consumers, but I would argue at the moment that too much of our thinking is tipped in favour of engagement without thinking enough about the importance of defaults and how we protect people who either can't or won't engage. Thanks.